Amendment by Dale.
I recognize Representative Dale.
Mr. Speaker, members, this amendment fulfills what DPS tells me is one of their top priorities for equipment on the border. So this would be $50.9 million to provide resources for 7 pilot positions, 8 tactical flight officers, and additional aircraft for DPS. These resources provide a constant and comprehensive state-of-the-art aerial detection and interdiction air patrol capability that would serve the state for well over the next decade. These aviation assets also provide additional rescue capabilities in the event of catastrophic natural and man-made disasters. This includes 2 Pilatus aircraft, 1 stationed in El Paso, 1 in Weslaco. Cost for those planes is $16.8 million, 3 Caravan aircraft, 1 stationed in Laredo, 1 in Alpine, 1 in Houston, and 2 new border helicopters to replace underpowered and aging helicopters on the border that support rapid response teams, and they'll operate more safely in warmer temperatures and at higher altitudes.
Mr. Speaker.
Ms. Gonzalez.
The 2 helicopters would cost $11.2 million. This also includes operating costs for the biennium, pilots, and tactical flight officers. The members, I would remind you that the Republican caucus supports this amendment, so does the Texas Conservative Coalition. Today, DPS has 1 Pilatus aircraft, 2 Caravans, and 5 helicopters on the border. As a result of federal regulations for how long the pilots can keep it in the air, scheduled downtime, and if they have unscheduled downtime, we do not always have these air assets available. They're incredibly reliable. They've got great optics that help with the
Ms. Gonzalez, for what purpose?
detection and interdiction.
Will the gentleman yield?
Mr. Dale, do you yield for question?
I'll yield for a question.
Gentleman yields.
Representative Dale, where are you getting this money from that you're proposing?
Yeah, the money is coming out of Strategy 3A, Health and Human Services.
And what is that fund exactly?
That's got human resources, payroll and leave support, procurement, information technology, facilities and leasing, community support, collaboration, and a few other programs. I think it's important to note, members, that that particular part of Health and Human Services is currently budgeted for an increase of $197 million. So I'm not trying to zero out that department. In fact, they'll still get an increase of $146 million. $146 million still goes to that Health and Human Services division. We're just trying to move $50.9 million.
And what type of services does HHSC provide to Texans? What type of services does HHSC provide to Texans?
Well, I suspect you know what kinds of services.
I think the people who are hopefully still watching at 1 in the morning should know what you're willing to cut from Texans services for this.
Well, I'm not willing to cut anything because we're still going to give them $146 million more than they were budgeted for the last biennium. That's a lot of money.
But because there's a greater need, there's more Texans. We've underfunded HHSC for a very long time.
Yeah, I don't think giving a department an increase and then saying they're going to get less of an increase is a cut.
Well, I would argue that if you want to take the money, do you need to take the money from HHSC?
If you got to take the money, you got to take it from somewhere. And I looked at a department where I thought there would be the least amount of impact. This is not a department that has direct benefits to recipients of care over there. It's more of an administrative area.
In order to have the staff necessary to make sure that Texans have access to the care, we need to have the money to have HR and things like that. So I worry that your amendment is going to have a negative consequence on the lives and the health of the people in Texas. Thank you.
You're welcome. Members, I move passage.
I recognize Representative Turner in opposition.
Mr. Speaker and members, a few points on the amendment. Colonel McGraw came to the Appropriations Subcommittee and outlined his priorities for his agency. In his presentation to the Subcommittee on Appropriation, he did not ask for these items. On the exceptional items that was presented to the Appropriations, to the House Appropriations Committee from DPS, and let me tell you, there were a lot of them. They total close to $2 billion. The exceptional items total close to $2 billion. DPS did not ask for these items. Their priorities, they certainly wanted a 10-hour workday across the board. They wanted the additional troopers. He said at max they could do 250. The House Appropriations Committee gave him 300. We gave him 10 hours of workday for those troopers along the border. He says cybersecurity was a major priority. We funded cybersecurity. We gave them another $28 million. They wanted to expand the anti-gang force across the state of Texas. We gave them, I think, another $20-some million to do that. Their top priorities we funded. Throughout the entire appropriation process, they did not ask for 2 Pilatus aircraft. They didn't ask for 3 Cessna Caravan aircraft. And they didn't ask for the 2 helicopters. And in the appropriations bill, there's about $565 million for DPS for the border security. That is within the appropriations bill. Now, the downside with this amendment is that Representative Dale is paying for this by pulling the money from Health and Human Services. You cannot just look at the GR that's being reduced, because he's pulling it from a strategy that pulls down federal matching dollars. So he compounds the problem to Health and Human Services, okay? And so I know people may want all of these items, and I'm not going to stand before you to say they should or shouldn't. Hold on one second. And I don't want this to turn into a partisan deal. It's just about being fiscally prudent. It shouldn't matter whether you're a D or an R. If DPS didn't ask for it, they didn't ask for it. Can't blame a D. I didn't have them to do the exceptional items. We can only appropriate from what they asked for. They didn't ask for it. Lastly, and I'm through, we have $560-some million in the bill. It's going to conference. To the extent the Senate is higher, and they are, and the House is where it is, then there'll be some give and take along the way. I'm not going to promise you that there's going to be a Cessna, a helicopter, and some Caravan aircraft in it. But the reality is, if we're going to be fiscally prudent, then financial responsibility goes from one article all the way to the other. And I don't think anybody in the state of Texas has any money machine that we are running out money and we can just do anything no matter how good it sounds. I would ask that the amendment be tabled.
Thank you. Okay.
Chair recognizes Representative Dale to close.
Mr. Speaker, members, thank you very much. You know, I'll just reiterate a couple things. We are here to appropriate as well, and when I asked DPS what they needed, this is what they gave me. I made this known to the subcommittee members as well. You know, in the past 4 weeks, we've had 16,000 apprehensions on the Texas border. 16,000. We don't know how many we miss. Our defense on the border is in layers. You've got your air assets at different levels. You got the boats on the river. You got the people on the ground. You got the DPS troopers on the road back behind it. If you don't have all these layers, you're missing opportunities to interdict and deter, and also come to the assistance of Border Patrol agents on the ground, of DPS agents on the ground. This is a multi-year asset that you're going to have in these planes. The DPS thinks is going to last up to 10 years. I think it's a solid investment. Tried to take it out of a administrative section where they're already getting a substantial increase in their appropriation. And the biggest part of their increase comes in professional fees and services, which I highly doubt has federal matching funds associated with it. So I say vote against the motion to table.
Mr. Speaker,
Jay, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield?
Mr. Dale, do you yield?
Yes.
Gentleman yields.
Representative Dale, wouldn't you agree that simply one Pilatus airplane would equal many, many troops on the ground as far as its capabilities?
I don't disagree with that, and the problem is that when this aircraft's not on station, you don't have that kind of coverage, and we only have one today.
Right.
And You know, it's a machine. It does break down from time to time, but it also requires routine maintenance under FAA rules.
And you, like I, have had conversations with DPS about the value of this and that the request was made, correct?
Well, they certainly made it to me, and I made it known to the members of the subcommittee.
And every member of the legislature was delivered this spiral-bound notebook, which had requests for assets on the border, and air assets were included in this, were they not?
They were.
Thank you, Mr. Dale.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the gentleman
For
yield.
what purpose?
Ask
Dale,
questions
Mr. Dale yields.
of the author. Or to make a statement in support of your amendment. You know, I was at that same meeting that Sylvester was at. They asked about, it had most to do with funding additional officers and costs. I've got notes here on the whole thing. And while I was there, they talked about 404 graduates, 13.7 million each for academy, higher salaries for 40 people, 19 million for troopers, 13.7 million for another 40. You know what else they wanted? Have it right here. In that training, they wanted, yes, salaries, they wanted lodging, yes, equipment to go into the field, weapons, uniforms, breakdown, albeit they didn't say helicopters, airplanes. But Colonel McCraw's position was he felt like when he was coming into this, he was asking too much and he wasn't going to get it and went for the essentials. So from what I heard being in the same meeting, yes, if he could get that, he would have taken it. But he did mention those things. So I think we need to pass on the motion to table and accept the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Price, for what purpose?
ask the gentleman some questions.
Mr. Dale, do you yield for questions?
Yes, I yield for a question.
Gentleman yield.
Representative Dale, I sure appreciate what you're trying to do with the amendment and bringing more aid to DPS, especially with items that they may have requested of you. I'm curious, in your analysis, have you undertaken to determine if you take money out of the strategy and Health and Human Services, what the impact in terms of federal matching dollars that would be lost?
Well, no, I have not. And the reason is it's been very difficult to determine that based on what was in the budget. It was also fairly complicated, I would say, to get the detailed information that my staff was able to eventually find. So I do not have that exact answer. I can't answer that for you. Can you say that?
Mr. Dale sends up an amendment. Representative Turner moves to table. This is on the motion to table. Vote aye, vote nay. Clerk, ring the bell. Show Representative Turner voting aye. Show Representative Dale voting no. Show Mr. Simpson voting no. Show Representative Larry Gonzalez voting aye. Show have all voted. Show Representative Price voting aye. Being 82 ayes and 62 nays, the motion to table prevails.